Hi team, I hope you're all well. Today I am going to be doing the ultimate book tag. I have seen Jesse the Reader do this recently, so I will leave a link to his video in the description box down below where I got the inspiration to do this. And I'm excited. I do enjoy doing a good old book tag video, so I'm excited to do this one. There are 9 questions on here and I am looking forward to it. If you see me looking away, it's because I've written the questions down because my memory is bloody awful. Okay, so the first one is for a book that I will always recommend. I wonder if you can guess any of these as you're going through. Let me know in the comments down below if you guess any of them correctly. But I will always recommend The Invisible Life of Addy Laroo by V.E. Schwab. I adore this book. I'm due a reread, I swear. I really love this. It was my favourite book of 2019. No, it's not that old, not 2019, surely not. 2020 it must have been, because that must have been, I'm sure I read it when it came out. I truly love this book. It was so good. This was one of the first fantasy books that I physically read with a writing style that I wouldn't usually get on with, like a whimsical writing style. I usually hate that. That I gave 5 stars to and became very quickly one of my favourite books ever. And it's incredible, actually. I truly love this book. We're in France 1714, yep, and we are following Addy Laroo, who at the time is a very young woman and she makes a very dangerous, silly mistake. She is very much so of the thought that we don't get enough time on the world, and we don't get enough time to see all of the things we want to see and do all of the things we want to do, and she ends up making a deal with someone to have more time and essentially become immortal. And she makes this deal with this person. However, the person has a caveat that no one will remember her, and she's like, yeah, that's totally worth it, it's going to be fine. She doesn't realise the implications of what she's just done though, and we end up following her through the years and through the decades and the centuries actually as well, to a point where we follow her almost in present day. And over the years, she's seen so much, she's done so much with her life. However, nobody remembers her. This woman cannot hold down a job. She cannot get a place to live. She cannot own a car. She cannot do any of the simple, mundane things that we take for granted every single day because no one can remember her. The minute they go to sleep, they wake up and they have no idea who she is. So the job. She can go for an interview, she can get the job. The following day, they've no idea that they've interviewed her, she's got a job. The apartment. She can rent an apartment, but the following day, the person who's rented the apartment has no idea who she is, why she's in their apartment, what is going on, etc, etc. So nobody remembers her until one person does. And she can't figure out why all of a sudden, after all of these centuries, this one person can remember who she is. And it's incredible. It's a story. It's a beautifully told story. It's such a beautiful story. It's absolutely heartbreaking, absolutely devastating. It hits you right in the feels, and it's just so good. I cried so much through this. There were times of laughter, there were times of joy, but a lot of tears. It's so heartbreaking and it really hits you in the feels, and it's very good. And I am obsessed with this book. I will always recommend it. I think it is very good, even just for opening your eyes at taking a good look at your own life and realizing just how lucky you are with your life. I know we may complain about the day-to-day mundane things, money, etc, but imagine if you had all of the time in the world but not a single person in your life could remember you. You watched all the people you love die, no one knows who you are, and you're just wading through life. You're never gonna die and nobody knows who you are, and it's just terrifying. The thought of it is terrifying, and it's just such a beautiful story, and I'll always recommend it on that basis. So yeah, go pick this up. Next we have a book I will always recommend if I think we've got similar tastes. Now this one is a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's going off on a bit of a tangent a little bit, but I'll always recommend this if I think we've got similar tastes because I absolutely love it. But I'll only recommend it in one specific reading way. So it is Illuminae, the Illuminae Files by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I truly love this series. Now I've read this book 3 times. I've read Gemina 3 times, and I'm due a reread of Obsidio to get me up to 3 times with that as well. I never get bored with rereading this, and the only way I would recommend reading this book is audibly with the physical copy. This book is told in mixed media. You have transcripts, you have interviews, you have emails back and forth. There is so much going on. You have interactions with the AI on board that are done in a very bizarre way, but the audiobook brings this story completely to life. It almost makes it a movie inside of your head, and it's absolutely fantastic. In this story, we are following 2 warring corporations that essentially cause absolute chaos on this planet, meaning that all of the people need to get off and get on ships. Now, there seems to be something going on, but there are several different things happening here. We have this AI on one of the ships called Addy, who is incredibly clever and ends up with a mind of his own and starts controlling things that he shouldn't be controlling. We have a bit of like a virus going around that's turning everyone into essentially like zombies and killing everybody on one of the ships as well, and infecting all of the people on the ship. There are so many different things going on, as well as the corporation war as well, which seems to be affecting these people too. So there's a lot happening. It is obviously a sci-fi, and it's so very well done. There is so many more things going on than that. If you really want to know exactly what's going on in this story, I would recommend reading the synopsis, because it does a better job of explaining it than I do, and I don't have the synopsis on the back of this book, otherwise I'd read it to you. Oh, hang on. This morning, Katie thought breaking up with Ezra was the hardest thing she ever had to do. This afternoon, her planet was invaded. The year is 2575, and 2 rival megacorporations, blank and blank, are at war over a planet that's little more than an ice-covered speck at the edge of the universe. Too bad nobody thought to warn people living on it. With enemy fire raining down on them, exes Katie and Ezra, who are barely even talking to each other, are forced to fight their way onto the evacuating fleet with an enemy warship in hot pursuit. But the warship is the least of their problems. A deadly blank has broken out and is mutating with terrifying results. The fleet's AI, which should be protecting them, may actually be their enemy. And nobody in charge will say what the blank is going on. As Katie hacks into a tangled web of data to find the truth, it's clear only one person can help her bring it all to light, the ex-boyfriend she swore she'd never speak to again. Briefing note. Told through a fascinating dossier of hacked documents including emails, schematics, military files, IMs, medical reports, interviews, and more. Illuminate is the first book in a heart-stopping, high-octane trilogy about lives interrupted, the price of truth, and the courage of everyday heroes. It's so interesting, the whole blank thing, like it's actually blanked out like a, you know, important document that goes on throughout the thing as well. So interesting. And throughout the books you follow a different set of 2 characters until like towards the very end of the 2nd book and into the 3rd book they all kind of come together, and it's so interesting. Audiobook, physical book, do it in tandem, because it's the only way to enjoy this read. I think you could enjoy it physically reading it. I think just audiobooking it you wouldn't get the same effect, but I think to audiobook and follow through, it's just one of the best reading experiences I have ever had, ever. So I would recommend. So next we have a book that I love but I would not recommend, and for this one I'm going for Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. Now I would recommend this to certain people but not to everybody, because of the trigger warnings in this book and the story that goes along with it. This is all kinds of fucked up. I don't know how else to explain it. It's all kinds of fucked up. It is essentially a kidnapping story in which the 2 kidnapped end up falling for each other. So we are following Cora and also Dean. Cora is attending her sister's birthday party. She gets very, very drunk. She doesn't get on with Dean, her sister's boyfriend. They are very much so enemies, not talking, but she ends up very, very drunk. She ends up calling him because her wallet gets stolen, so he comes to get her, and then they end up being kidnapped outside this bar and taken. They wake up, they find themselves in this basement, strapped up together essentially, and it starts off with them bickering with each other, really badly bickering, until eventually they realise they've only got the two of them for support. Their kidnapper ends up obviously coming down and visiting them every now and then, giving them food, letting them have toilet breaks, but things start to become very much more sinister. Trigger warnings in here for sexual assault, rape, obviously everything that comes along with kidnapping, etc, etc. And these two end up building a relationship off of the fact that they're both terrified, they're both in the same situation, they are both struggling with exactly what is going on, and they end up building this relationship. And it's just, you find yourself having the ick, but in such a way that you feel so fucking bad for their situation. Like, there is literally nothing they can do here other than follow the rules. And everything you think that could potentially happen in this book with these two specifically, in the situation they're stuck in and the trigger warnings I've just given you, happens. And it's awful, absolutely awful. But this is a story of kind of facing this with another person who you know but you don't get on with, but you manage to get through and come through it the other side as well. You do end up following them after the events of this, and it's just heartbreaking what they go through. It's absolutely heartbreaking. The reason why I wouldn't recommend it to everybody is because of the plot itself. This is very specific to certain people that could read something like this and not come out of it feeling triggered in any way, shape or form. It's incredibly fucked up, and I would only recommend it to certain people. And then because of the triggers as well, I can't remember if there is a long list of triggers in here. There should be. If there isn't, it doesn't look like it, unless there is at the back. This is definitely one of those books that should have a list of triggers in it. It doesn't appear to do so, but I would recommend checking out the triggers if you're thinking about picking this up. Yeah, if you're thinking about picking this up, I would recommend checking out the triggers. But yeah, it's a book that I loved. I gave it 5 stars. It was absolutely incredible. It was in, I think, my top 3, if not my favourite book of last year. But I wouldn't recommend it to everybody. It's very specific people, for sure. Okay, next we have a book that I don't like, but I would recommend. And for this one, I'm going to go for The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. Now, I don't physically own my copy anymore. I ended up unhauling it because I DNF'd this book, and I'm absolutely devastated. This follows a couple, a married couple, and he doesn't know her particularly well, and he thinks she's hiding some secrets, and we basically go through the process of following her both present day and in past, and him basically uncovering some of her secrets. There is a friend involved as well on her side of things from when she was a child, which is how we find out some of her past. And I believe that there is some sort of mystery element to this book as well. Other than that, I don't know a great deal about it. I did start it, got about 70 pages in. Unfortunately, the writing style wasn't for me, and I'm heartbroken because Jade told me exactly what happened in the book, because she's read it, and I said to her, I really need to know what happened in the Tale of the Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I think that's the title of the book anyway. Last Tale of the Flower Bride. Because I was so intrigued by the plot. It was the writing I couldn't get past. So the issue for me, if the plot had been shit but the writing had been fantastic, I'd have pushed my way through it. I can't get past the writing, and if you are struggling with the writing of a book, no matter how good the plot is, you're gonna struggle because you're not going to enjoy the writing style. So she told me the plot of the book, everything, spoilers 100%, and I got to the end and I was like, oh fuck. This sounds like, for me, it would be a 5-star read, one of my favourite books ever. It sounds right up my alley, and I'm heartbroken that I can't continue reading this book because I don't like the writing style. So this is a book that I didn't like, but I would recommend because I believe it's very popular. If you don't like flowery, whimsical, lyrical writing, you're not going to get on with this book because it is 100% that. But if that doesn't bother you, but you like I think it's like a gothic, I think it's like a gothic fantasy romance with a mystery element to it. It's got a lot going on, I believe. So yeah, that's the book that I don't like, but I would recommend. A book I wish more people had recommended to me sooner. So I picked this one up because of Maddie, and I ended up loving this. I did my whole, you know, one of my friends recommends me a book that they think I'm gonna love, a book they think I'm not gonna like, and then a book they're unsure about. And Maddie recommended me A Psalm for the Wild Bill by Becky Chambers. Now, I have previously DNF'd Long Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I don't think there's 2 longs in there. Previously DNF'd that book, so I've not continued with that series, and I thought it was Becky's writing style that I didn't like. However, I ended up picking this one up for that video with Mads, which I will leave a link to up here if you want to check it out. It was great. And I fucking loved this. This was fantastic. It's a novella. It's a slice of life book following a tea monk who decides that they want to go off on their own and do a little bit of exploring, and one day their life is upended by a robot. Now, it's been centuries since the robots of Panga gained self-awareness and laid down their tools, centuries since they wandered en masse into the wilderness, never to be seen again. So this tea monk is just happily spending their life just doing what they want to do. This robot turns up and their life is changed forever. They end up sharing stories between themselves. They end up going exploring together, and it's so interesting, so fascinating, so wholesome and cozy, and I truly enjoyed this, and I kind of wish more people had recommended this to me before. I'm so grateful that Maddie ended up recommending this to me, because I'm not sure I ever would have picked it up otherwise, because I just assumed with it being Becky Chambers I wouldn't like it. But I ended up loving this so much. I immediately then bought the second one and read that one, and I really do want to do a reread soon. This was the most wholesome thing, one of the most wholesome things I've ever read. Very much on par with The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. It was, but shorter, very much slice of life, absolutely fantastic, would recommend. Next, a book by an author I'll always recommend. I have gone for Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I'm always going to recommend Brandon Sanderson to people. If you are looking to start reading fantasy books, like high epic fantasy, if you are already a high epic fantasy reader and you've never read anything from him before, if you regularly pick up high fantasy and you want to try Brandon Sanderson, I am 100% gonna recommend this book to everybody across the board who reads fantasy, because Brandon Sanderson's writing style is so easy to get through. I have found myself picking up high fantasy before now that I thought would be right up my street, and it's been so complicated and I've not known what the hell is going on, and I've ended up putting it down because I just can't figure it out. It's too complicated for me. Whereas I haven't yet to find myself struggling with a Brandon Sanderson book. Granted, I didn't fully enjoy Mistborn Era 2, but that was because of the setting, not his writing style. Similarly with Warbreaker, it's because of the story, not because of his writing style. So Elantris, though, has been one of my favourite books from Brandon Sanderson since I read it years and years ago. This was the first book I ever read from Brandon Sanderson, and I absolutely loved it. And if you are wanting to start with Sanderson, I would recommend Elantris or Mistborn Era 1. So those are the books I would recommend starting with, because they're very easy to get into. If you're intimidated by his world entirely, Elantris is great because right now it's a standalone. It's supposed to be getting a sequel, God only knows when. But right now it's a standalone and it's very easy to get through. Despite being chunky, it is 580 pages, but it is a very easy book to get through. So we're following a princess who arrives at Elantris, and she was supposed to marry in order to bring the two places together. However, she arrives to hear that her husband-to-be is actually dead. And it's kind of a story of her trying to figure out what's gone on with him and exactly what's going on. There's more to this story, though. There is religion in here a little bit. It's not too heavy, though. I'm not a huge fan of reading about religion, but it's not too heavy. It's very good. But honestly, the synopsis is the easiest way to tell you what's going on with this book. Elantris was a place of glory. The capital of Erlon, it was home to people transformed into magic using demigods by the Sheod. But then the magic failed. Elantris started to rot and its inhabitants became powerless wrecks. In the new capital, Kay, close enough to Elantris to remind everyone what they have lost. A princess arrives. Serene was to marry, unite Teod and Elon against religious imperialists, but Raoden, her husband-to-be, is dead. Determined to fight for Teod and Elon's freedom, Serene clashes with the High Priest Harathian, but there are still secrets in Elantris. The dead and the ruined may yet have a role to play in this new world because magic still lives. It's so fascinating, absolutely fantastic. The writing style is really easy, and I will always recommend Sanderson, and I will always just automatically buy his books without knowing the synopsis. Because I love his writing style. So yeah, Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, 100%. Next we have a book I wish more people would recommend. So more people would recommend in general. So we've had a book I wish people would have recommended to me sooner. This is a book I wish more people would recommend. And that is The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum. This book is fascinating. It's been a long time since I read this book. This is another one that I really want to reread soon. But I still think about this book on the daily. It is stuck in my head and I cannot get past it. I don't know if it'll have the same impact on me on reread, but it is absolutely fantastic. Following two boys, August and Jack. August is a misfit with a pyro streak, and Jack is a golden boy on the varsity rugby team. But they have an intense friendship that goes way, way back. And they constantly, you know, they like to play like these different, I don't know, they like to pretend that they're knights and things like that. Anyway, we get to a point where Jack's having way more vivid hallucinations and it's getting really, really bad. And August just kind of goes along with it because he thinks his friend needs the support. There must be other stuff going on in the background, but he thinks his friend needs the support. So he goes along with it until these hallucinations start getting incredibly, incredibly bad. And as you go through the story, I don't know if you can see this, but as you go through the story, the pages go from white to black to show the progression of how bad Jack's hallucinations really do get. So we start off with pretty normal, and then we start to get darker around the edges and darker still, and then darker still until the pages are completely black, at which point Jack's hallucinations are so bad. The chapters in here are very, very quick. This is very much so a book you can get through in a day. I also got through it in a day. The chapters will look like this with like little illustrations and stuff, and it's such an interesting, fascinating, heartbreaking, shocking read, and I've never stopped thinking about it. It's so fascinating, and I never saw the ending coming. Never saw it coming, not for 1 second. And it's so interesting, and I would 10 out of 10 recommend this. It was really, really good, and I wish I saw it about more often. Maybe it was back when it came out. I don't know when this came out. Maybe it was about a lot back when it came out, but I wish I saw 2017, so it's been out for a long time, but I wish I saw more people recommending it even to this day, because it is such a fantastic piece of work and I just love it. So yeah, this is the one I would recommend. Next we have a book that everyone recommended to me that I would recommend. There is so many on my shelves that I could pick from this, but one of my favourites is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I truly love this series, it's so good. We are following Calla, who, when she wasn't even 2 years old, her mum ran away from Alaska and from her dad for no other reason than the fact that she wanted to get away from the small town. She couldn't do it anymore. She did ask Calla's dad to come with, but he said no. So she left. She went to Boston, and over the years she's remarried. She's got a new husband now, and Calla has grown up. She's 26 years old. Now one day Calla loses her job. She goes back home to her parents and she's absolutely devastated. She's absolutely gutted. And then she gets this mysterious phone call from a woman who says, Calla, your dad's dying and we were hoping you would come to Alaska and see him. He really wants to see you. Will you do that? It's his like dying wish essentially. So she sits down with her stepdad and chats to him about this because he's a therapist, and she's like, he's great at this stuff. And he's like, Calla, are you going to regret, if he passes away and you've not seen him, are you going to regret it? Like, you have nothing to do now. You don't have a job. Why don't you just go? So she disappears for, her intention is a few weeks, I think. But when she lands to get her final flight then over to Alaska, which would be in a small like prop plane, she meets Jonah, who is a guy who's known her dad for a very long time and is now of the opinion that Calla has no right to know who her dad is. She left him all those years ago. She's not been interested in him ever since, and she must just be here for money. Calla's dad runs a very successful business in Alaska that transports things back and forth to the small town, and he thinks that she must have an agenda. So straight off the bat, enemies to lovers, and she then goes to see her dad, who has no idea she's coming, did not ask for her to come. It was all this woman meddling in because she wanted them to be reunited. So it's very interesting. I really love it. I love the small town vibes. It is very much small town because it is like set in Alaska. It's very off the beaten track, and I love the relationship that we see between Calla and her dad. I love the relationship she has with her mum and stepdad. I love the relationship we see between Calla and Jonah, and then the relationship she builds with other people within the town as well. And I just really enjoy it. There is so much going on, and it's such a fascinating story that I just really enjoy it. I thought it was fantastic, and I would 100% recommend it to other people that are interested in reading romance. It was really good. Also, these covers, stunning. 10 out of 10. The whole series was a 5-star series for me, so yeah, would recommend that one. And then finally, a book that everyone recommends but that I wouldn't recommend. So I do have two options for this one. So I've got The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I DNF'd this book. I got, I think, around 100 pages in, and I just wasn't enjoying myself. I've got to be honest, I was intrigued about the characters, but I wasn't enjoying myself with the story. I was really freaking bored. I don't know what the plot is anymore at all. I think it's Dark Academia, but I can't remember. Don't know the plot at all, but I know it's very popular, but I didn't like it. And then the second book is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I'm going to probably get a lot of hate for both of those because I just didn't enjoy either of these books. Again, I DNF'd Priory of the Orange Tree. I got about 260 pages in, DNF'd it. I was quite a ways in. I mean, that book is very chunky, but I was quite a ways in. And I got to a point where I just kind of put the book down and I was like, right, okay, if I was to reiterate what this book was about right now, what would I say? And all I could tell you was that there was a dragon and there was an arranged marriage at the very beginning of the book. That is it. Couldn't tell you a single character's name. I couldn't tell you anything else about the plot of this book. I was 260 pages in. Couldn't tell you anything else. I didn't care. I flipped to the back of the book to find 15 pages of character names. And I was like, absolutely fucking not. No, thank you. So yeah, I'm going to get a lot of hate for that one, I reckon. But also the Atlas 6. I would not recommend them. I didn't enjoy them. I mean, I've got to be honest, to be fair though, it's very rare that I will go, absolutely fucking not. I will never recommend this book to anyone. You know what? There is a book. I've forgotten the name of it though now. Is it Murder Most Unladylike? It's a middle grade book, and I got 2 pages into that book. In fact, it was the first page, and I DNF'd it because it was racist, it was fatphobic. I hated that book. It's very popular, and I don't know why. It's a middle grade. It's racist, it's fatphobic. I hated it. I read the first page. That's another one. That is one I would 100% not recommend to people. It's very rare I will say, I didn't like this book, so you shouldn't read it. So it's not like I wouldn't recommend necessarily the Atlas 6 to people or the Priory of the Orange Tree. These books are going to be for people that will enjoy them. And obviously a lot of people have enjoyed them, but for me personally, I didn't like them. And those are the reasons why. I just didn't care about the characters, or, well no, I did care about the characters in the Atlas 6. That was the only thing I cared about though. The plot, I was bored, and I wasn't enjoying the writing style. Priory of the Orange Tree, I had no fucking clue what was going on. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't even know the characters' names. I didn't know what was going on. All I wanted was to see a dragon, and I think at that point it still hadn't happened. I just knew there was meant to be a dragon in there somewhere. 15 pages of characters. No. No thank you. Not for me. There is no way I'm going to keep that in my head. Not only that, but the characters' names weren't like Paul or John or Evie. They were very obscure, fantastical names, and there is no fucking way I would ever keep that straight in my head, which explains the 15 pages of character names in the back of the book, but no. No thank you. But it's, yeah, like I say, it's very rare for me to be like, I didn't like this book so no one else should like it. I wouldn't do that. But Murder Most Unladylike, I'm sure that's the name of the book. I'll put a picture of it up here. It's by Robin Stevens. First page, racist and fatphobic within the first 2 pages. No thank you. That is a book that I would never recommend to people. Ever, ever, ever. That's the book I should have gone with, not the Atlas Six and the Priory of the Orange Tree, and exposed myself. But I didn't like those books. So if you were sitting here thinking, okay, me and Steph do have similar tastes, should I pick up Illuminae? If you didn't like the Atlas Six or the Priory of the Orange Tree, that should give you a bit more of an indication whether or not we still have similar tastes. Pick up Illuminae. But yeah, I had a fun time with this. It was good, it was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some more book recommendations. I know like Addy Laroo is predictable for me, probably the Illuminae files is predictable for me as well, but I do hope you get some recommendations, maybe with The Wicker King and also A Sound for the Wild Bill if you haven't picked it up. If you are very similar in my reading taste to me, you don't necessarily have a lot of triggers like myself. My only trigger is stalking. But if you don't have a lot of triggers like myself or none at all, Still Beating could be a book you may be interested in, but do please thoroughly read the synopsis, check all of the triggers before you pick it up. I love that book and I would love to recommend it to people, but it's got to be, you've got to be a certain type of person to read that book, because that book is fucked up. Fucked up. So yeah, I hope you have found some more recommendations. Chat to me in the comments down below. Are you going to pick anything up based off of this? And I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I shall see you in whatever comes next. Bye for now.